welcome to this week's show, episode 28 of Here to See the Shelburne. Thanks for joining us as we go through the remnants of an interesting Wednesday night in Talca Park where Qarabağ came to town, got what they wanted, but it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot to be positive about as this European journey continues. Donny, wonderful to have you with us again today. Firstly, Donny, how was your Wednesday evening?
Thanks, Andy. Good to be here. How was it? It was emotional, I suppose. Which, as you, knowing me as you do, you'd say, "Well, what's new?" It was up and down. Some of us would have seen it as maybe a bit of a shot to nothing, and to be enjoyed. I thought the fans were in great voice again. I thought the atmosphere was very good. Obviously, a different vibe to the Linfield thing. There wasn't the same immediate jeopardy, and there wasn't the same needle in the air as there was with Linfield. But that was to be expected. Only 17 Qarabağ fans availed of tickets on the night, so that sort of says it all, really. And look, from feeling like it's a shot to nothing, and let's see what we're in for. A very early indication that it was going to be a long night, and that these guys were probably the best football team I've ever seen up close at Talca Park. I'll be honest. Technically, speed wise, just really, really a cut above. And thinking, well, if we're not careful here, this could be anything. To going in at half time feeling okay, well, we've been on the back foot. That wasn't a brilliant half for us, but the fact that it was only the minimum difference between the teams, and then feeling happy enough with that. And then the second half, I have it written in here, just I was bursting with pride, and that's where the emotion really started to come into it, from a sort of a look, it's a shot to nothing, and what will be approach to the first half, seeing how brave, valiant, beautiful that we were at the start of I'd say the first 25 minutes of that second half. I was just so proud of the club, of the fans and the team were kind of, it was like a pair of lungs working in unison, just kind of breathing energy into one another. It was really, really special. It was like really special, and I know I have a propensity for high emotion, but even on my own scale, that was something really that I didn't see coming. So, unfortunately, after that high and feeling like we've really given an excellent account of ourselves after 75, 80 minutes on the whole, considering the context of what we saw in our first half, particularly, the last 10 minutes was crushing. It was crushing, and there was a backdrop of when's the next time we're likely to see Champions League football in Talca. The fact that this is the last game in this European odyssey, hopefully that's in front of us, that we're going to be able to play in our own stadium, is kind of had me a bit tinged with sadness on the way out. That ultimately, look, football has no sentiment at the end of the day, very little at any rate. But I really did feel at the end of it all, Andy, that we didn't get what we deserved ultimately, and it was a cruel ending to what was really a very, very admirable performance.
Yeah, football at that level is cruel, Donny. But if you don't put yourself in these positions, then what's the point in challenging at the top? For anyone who may have just casually checked the score, flicking through their phones at 10 p.m. on Wednesday night to see a 3-0 win, was that a bit harsh, or was that the reality of top football? First half, I thought we were just way too nice. I thought we were a little bit naive. And Joey, thankfully, agreed with me afterwards when he said we just gave them too much respect. It's easy to say that now in the aftermath, but is that really the case? The first half, we just didn't seem to lay a glove on them.
I think so, and Joey, as you said as much himself. And look, there's an element of that as well, but I think there's maybe been sort of caught in the headlights a bit, because like ourselves in the Riverside, we didn't, until you see it, you don't really know what sort of animal you're dealing with. and like we knew they'd be good, and you're like, well, obviously these guys are going to be good because we've seen their pedigree and how regularly they appear in group stage football and so on. But then it unfolds in front of your eyes in real time at this hellacious pace, and you're thinking, okay, well, I knew they were going to be good, but this is it took me by surprise, to be honest. So I wouldn't fault players too much for maybe being caught a little unawares. And look, maybe you could look back to last year in Zurich and say we should have maybe learned from that. And look, we didn't concede as early as we did there, or anything like it. But it showed, I suppose, second half when we actually asked a few questions of them, they were found a little bit wanting. So there's an element of sure, maybe we stood off them too much, or didn't do things as well as we should have done. Maybe didn't have the self-confidence, but at the same time they were really outstanding and sort of terrifying as they were coming at us, embodied by their number 10, Zubair, I think is his name, who was just on it from the first minute and terrorized us down our right flank early and often in that first half.
I think it's fair to say, Donny, this tie was effectively killed off, if we're being honest. But there's certainly no need to be down in the dumps. The second half performance, as you said there, I was wonderful to watch. We gave it. It wasn't Jackie Charlton put them under pressure stuff. It was good. It was controlled. It was deliberate. Mark Coyle came in. It looked like he had not a point to prove, but he led. He really drove the team forward from that position on the field. And we almost, I thought, possibly scored one of the greatest goals I've ever seen in Talca, with the Harry Wood when he hit fresh air. Can't remember who. I think it was, someone, I think, sprayed it out to Norris. Norris first time into McEnroy, who swept it in left footed, beautiful. And it was nearly goal of the decade.
And you would have backed Harry, like if you were able to pause things in real time and said, okay, who would you like this to fall to? I think, given how well he'd played on the night, Harry Wood was the perfect guy. So yeah, the fresh air didn't do it justice. And as you said earlier, did we not get what we deserved? That move didn't result in what it deserved. And on the night, we didn't get what we deserved, I think. But in some strange upside down way, had we gone in at half time 2 or 3 goals down, could we have had too many arguments against it? I don't think so. It was unusually cruel the way it shook out, that having given such a good account of ourselves in the second half, that was the half we lost 2-0. Whereas in the first half, where we were sort of clinging on and only for a bit of wayward finishing on their parts and various things like that, it could quite easily have been that. So yeah, the game, the sort of scoreline doesn't certainly reflect the two halves. And even, you're asking if someone was to look at the score on one of the apps or something and say, oh, well, maybe Shells were, just battening down the hatches and ran out of steam late on. That doesn't tell it either, because it was us who were asking the questions of Qarabağ, and ultimately we got punished on the counter for being ambitious and for trying to get back in the game. And I suppose in some respects, the fact that we showed that ambition was a measure of the words that Joey O'Brien had said prior to the game, that he said we were going to have a go and that we weren't going in there to sit in and just try and get out with a narrow defeat or a 0-0. He actually wanted to go and have a cut off them, and so it proved.
Lots of questions and comments this week, Tony. Just before I get into them, I think we both wish Tyreek well. His collision happened just in front of me. Didn't look good. I think it was accidental. Initially, I thought it was his knee, but I believe it could be his ankle. But it's really sad to see. And then secondly, I thought Lorcan Healy had a really good game. The whatever happened in the last couple of minutes was unfortunate, but to be fair to Lorcan, I thought he stepped up. He made a couple of really good saves. He did the basics to a very high standard. His distribution was good, and I just wanted to give him credit for that.
Yeah, I believe just on the Tyreek thing, I think the word going around on the night was it was a broken ankle. I've since been told, and again, I can't verify it 100%, but just the word on the grapevine is that it's more of a ligament issue and not a break. Now, sometimes that can sound counterintuitive in that sometimes ligament damage can be longer and more troublesome than a break, where a bone can be set in place and back to normal quicker. But not all ligament damage is created equal either, as someone who's had a fair share of it. So yeah, just it's unfortunate, and Godspeed, and hopefully he's back with us soon.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, questions, comments, lots of them. Sean O'Reilly. First couple of minutes, we were unlucky not to score. Once they scored, we found it hard to get into the game. We were every bit as good as them in the second half. And to add in injury to insult, we make our usual stupid mistake and give them the third goal. What else? We have lots here. Liam Byrne, Cam and Paddy were extremely solid as a pair. But he's wondering why centre half. Why does Cam continue in that sort of centre half area when he's sort of a natural wing back? I think Cam, to be fair to him, has filled in a lot of places. Dave Ward, the possession and performance in the second half was something else. If they can find that energy for the rest of the season, we'll make a show of the rest of the league. Donny.
Yeah, well, on that last point anyway, Andy, this is what you'd hope, right? The modern cultural parlance of hashtag learnings, that there are plenty of learnings to take from it and apply it and reapply it to our domestic form as well as the rest of the European campaign. And that Shamrock Rovers on their best day wouldn't be as good as what we saw from Qarabağ there, particularly in the first half. So like this is us, hopefully getting a look at high level teams and finding a way to match them, and trying to take the good out of that. Certainly, that second half performance would suggest that if we believe in ourselves, if we back ourselves to be adventurous, that there's a lot to be gotten from that. And look, our next league game is against Sligo Rovers, and certainly, if we were able to apply ourselves for 20-25 minutes at that level against a team like Sligo, for example, you'd presume that we would have converted a chance or two, and that might be enough to put a game to bed in the league. So absolutely, it's something that will hopefully stand to us. I'm a little wary about those huge overarching narratives around stuff like that, because it's all quite nebulous. There's a lot of travel involved. It takes a lot. Like, we put an awful lot of effort into that performance on Wednesday, and that's another part of the reason why I was particularly sort of sad afterwards, was because to get no reward, to lose the home unbeaten run for 20 years as well after being so good in that second half was cruel. But like, make no mistake about it, like, we've got a bad injury to a stalwart player there. We've got players out on their feet. Everybody left it all out on the pitch, and you come away with a 3-0 reversal, and now you've got to fly to the outer reaches of the of Europe, to go again against this team in their backyard, and then you got to come back and sort of reassess where we are. That can take a lot out of the players, and just because you did it in Talca one night doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see it over and over again. So look, it's about a mentality and how you choose to sort of funnel that energy, and how you manage your own energy, I think, as a player through this very, very difficult period. So I don't think everybody's going to suddenly go up a couple of notches, and I think a lot's going to fall on Joey's plate about managing minutes and making some tough decisions regarding personnel, I think, going forward, Andy.
Yeah, we'll touch Donny maybe in a few minutes on the trip to Baku. It's not going to be a week in the sun for the lads. It's going to have sort of it'll be a very busy period to follow that game. Donny, we on our social media in the last day or so, we described. I said it was not to be against a classy Qarabağ, which seemed to ruffle a few feathers. Now, Viva la David. What was classy about how much time they spent on the deck nursing quote unquote injuries? And we received similar sort of stuff. Shells fan, that's how he's come here, wouldn't describe them as classy at all. A few smooth players, but nothing great. We should have been ahead or equalised. Now, Dunny, you're the educator here. Has the word have we lost something in translation with the term classy? Now, I would certainly not mean these fellas are, a young George Clooney or a la that. I mean, if you actually strip it all back, these guys to me were the best team I've seen in Talca Park. They were top pros, high press, touch, moving, speed, and the killer instinct. They soaked up the pressure. That's to me what I meant as a classy act. Dark arts, absolutely. What do you expect, folks? Do you want them to get up and rub people on the back? This is the big stuff, Tony, and that's what I meant by classy.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people were a bit sensitive. I mean, no more so than myself, very sensitive about it. After the fact, that you felt I spent a lot of time roaring abuse at them for simulation and rolling around, and the referee at times you felt was letting them get away with an awful lot. But were they a class football team? Absolutely. Did they have classy footballers in the sense of like a George Best level of class on the ball? Absolutely. Your man Zubir, I believe, uh, has been doing this for a long time with them. I saw some Dundalk fans reminiscing about him destroying them and looking unbelievable in 2019. So that's 6 years ago, where he was doing the same in Europe, and he's still doing it with the armband. He kind of reminded me on the night. My first ever football club was Granada under eights. I joined, and there was a fella. I can't remember his name actually, but there was a lad who had the armband, took all the throw-ins, regardless of what area of the field, took corner kicks both sides, took every free kick, attacking and defensive. And this little prick, you couldn't get any of these set pieces off him. The manager absolutely adored him, and to be fair, he was quality. And and to that end, you couldn't really argue. And your man Zubir kind of reminded me of him. You know what I mean? Like everybody was sort of deferring to him, giving him the ball. He was also the shithouser in chief, rolling around and conning the ref and killing the game. And I have it written down here as well. Game management from Qarabağ to feign injury, to halt our momentum, and that's ultimately, I think, you could probably trace the moment that we kind of lost our way in that second half prior to them scoring, when that real just incessant, that beautiful 20-25 minutes that I spoke about was kind of fizzled out. Was, I believe, they had not one but two players down in need of attention at the same time, and by the time with the jigs and the reels, that all of that was teased through, the sort of puff had gone out. The air was out of the balloon a little bit. So look, were they classy individuals as regards stand up sportsmen? Probably not. But insofar as a class bunch of footballers, absolutely. And could we learn things from them? Even down to the infuriating gamesmanship, I definitely think we could.
Our favourite two words this season, Dunny, have been game management. That to me was prime game management. And if people seem to get upset by it, of course I was equally as abusive to certain players for going down. quick word on the referee. Ante Kalina, I think, from Croatia. It would have been actually better if he had have brought his Ante to referee the match, because I thought he was dreadful. Um, as you know, Donny, I'm a paid up member of the referees union. I thought he had zero control of the game. His authority, he didn't have authority. If you looked at his decisions, it was a bit wishy-washy in his body language. I thought he allowed too much shenanigans go on, and I'd be interested to see I'd love to see his referees report afterwards. But then again, in UEFA, everything's probably all rosy. So back to game management. Question here for myself, Tony, in relation to the personal development of players and coaches at Chelsea. Can they learn quickly ahead of the Europa League, which is to come, or is it something that takes time and reflection before these learnings can be put into practice?
When you're dealing with a group, I think, Andy, that is as large as a football squad, and I mean all players and all staff, it's very hard for it to become uniform and for everybody to learn at the same pace, because like in the same breath, you'd be throwing a blanket over Sean Gannon, for example, and say James Norris, and say, well, can both of them learn this, similar things, or get a bit of education and a bit of learning that they can take with them into the next round or whenever for the rest of the season. Someone I think like James Norris you would imagine could learn an awful lot. This is why, I think he was on the bench even when he was with Liverpool. He was brought to European games just to get used to, this is, what happens when you hang around the airport. This is, what it's like going to a big stadium and getting the warm up in, and all of that sort of ancillary things that you don't see unless you're part of the matchday squad. So whereas there's other people like Paddy Barrett and Sean Gannon and so on who, like, I'm not sure what else there is for them to pick up from such things, other than obviously in a two-legged game, in a two-legged tie. You would like to think that you'd sort of your homework and your knowledge of who your direct opponent is, and their sort of traits and sort of ticks and habits, that would increase. But on the whole, player to player, I think it's going to be very different. And when it comes to Joey, I think maybe the learnings are in when to stick and when to twist, when it comes to style, when to sit in and when to maybe to have a go. There could be an argument made that were we a little bit too gung-ho on Wednesday. I wouldn't make that argument too strongly myself, but it could be made. If we'd sat in and done what Linfield did to us, for example, in Talca, and kept it to 0-0 or to 1-0 in their favour, and tried to pull their pants down in Baku and hit them with a set piece or something late, who knows? But I think he'll be learning a lot about his players through this process, and who is adapting well and who maybe needs to be taken out of the firing line, or when it comes to minute management and so on. I think he'll be seeing a lot more maybe than we are as fans.
Commentary Dunny from Shell's fan again. He's on the same boat or same page as you. They used two players going down questionably to totally take the wind out of our sails. And then Paddy Mackin, he was sick for the players after a really good shift. That first 15-20 minutes in the second half was top class. The ball just won't hit the back of the net. Well, we did have the chances, as we said with Harry Wood, for example, to put that ball in the net. And then John Fraser, a man who always keeps us grounded. John, he was talking about the coefficient ranking, Dunny. When you consider these guys, I think, are around the 70 mark in Europe. The Shells are well into the 300s.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But, poor finishing again, defensive mistakes again, and a bit of naivete cost us.
It's hard to argue with any of that, isn't it? I mean, look, we knew we were up against it, and so it proved. And frankly, I think if we were all honest with ourselves, I know the second leg is yet to come, but I think we would need to. I just can't see really. I couldn't see a path to victory over the two legs. Even having seen us be on top and having seen them be on top, having seen us hit the post and the bar, and gifting them, as John says there, a very soft goal at the end. Particularly, you could argue we could have done more about the second goal as well. Not following it in when their player did follow it in. I think we gave up the ghost on that a little quick for my liking. But yeah, at the same time, you would hope that this is the sort of zenith of the competition that we're likely to pit our wits against this summer, and if we can sort of delve back into the well and dig out more periods and matches like that 20-25 minutes, then I think we'll have a good shout at making history, which is, as we've said before in this pod, Andy, this is what we're trying to do here this season. This team is trying to do something that no other Shells team in 130 years has managed to do. So we won't get too downcast yet.
Right, we'll move on to the away leg in just a second. What I've been impressed with Joey Dunny is that his post-match comments are usually spot on, but he says them in a way that is not, this is no reflection on the previous gaffer at all, but he was saying stuff like we were too open, our final ball wasn't good enough, and previous weeks he said, look, we've been good sort of in the middle, but both ends of the field we haven't been on it. He did say one thing afterwards. He said, respect on a field is fear. The lads will have to probably lick their wounds and, face into the fact that we've got a tough game coming on Wednesday. But the bigger picture lies ahead. So people shouldn't, I would say, not get too bogged down. So, Tony, since we last spoke, the draw for the Europa, as it was made, and we've been pitted against either, correct me if I'm wrong, Rijeka from Croatia or Ludogorets from Bulgaria. Now, that game, first leg, finished 0-0. Ludogorets in our home on Wednesday, I believe, for the second leg. Barring an incredible miracle, we'll be playing one of those, Donny. But before that, Shells have the small matter of travelling 8,000 kilometres return to Baku, which, if you actually look on the map, I had to expand my world map. I thought it was very close to Turkey. It's actually even further east from Turkey. It's a long way to Baku.
It's almost in Iran, so
it's a long way.
It's pushing the boundary of Europe to its upper bound limits, I think.
Yeah, and we have, I believe, high temperatures. It's going to be a physically and mentally tough trip. We'll probably fly out, I would imagine, Monday. Quick turnaround to get back. I think there's a league game next weekend against Sligo.
Saturday, yep.
Saturday, and then the Europa League game will be on the Thursday, I believe, the following Thursday, which I think is August 7th. Which again, if it's Bulgaria, that's another lengthy flight. So look, there's a lot going on at the moment. Now, Donny, you're the man I need to speak to about this. How does Joey pit this? He's obviously going to say, well, we're going to play our strongest team in Baku. But I think he used the phrase, was a performance over pride, something like that. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, risk. In my notes here about that second leg, risk versus pride. And there's an element there, obviously, of reps for players, of player minutes. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Thankfully, I suppose, in some respects now, you look post-COVID with the 5 outfield changes that you can make. You would imagine he'll use all 5 in this game, with the heat and with the jeopardy, effectively, of the game being gone. It's a tough balancing act, and I don't envy him. There are arguments to be made for putting out some shadow team or a version of it, something maybe akin to Decide that took the field against Fairview Rangers in the 4-0 win. However, obviously, the risk that's inherent in that is that you end up losing the home leg. It could be anything. It could be 6, it could be 7, it could be... Now, if that were to happen, how, you'd get the usual empty heads online having a pop, but ultimately I'd kind of rather that than have another Tyreek situation where somebody's hamstring explodes off the bone, or somebody's knee gets caved in, or somebody's ankle gets broken. Now that can happen regardless, I suppose, but these are the fine margins, and I think ultimately you'd probably say that he might have to go with a pretty strong team to start the game, with a view to maybe after an hour or so unloading the bench, and allowing whatever will come at that point, whether we're in the game on the night, or whether we're beaten out the gate on the night by the hour mark. I think you probably have to start withdrawing people that are absolutely irreplaceable when it comes to league points, and with an eye on the next round, which of course will be only 6 days from there. So like we're 8 days with the league game in the middle, right? So this will be Wednesday. Yeah, it'll be the following Thursday. So, and as you said, a lot of travel. We all know it just from going on holidays. We all know it just from following the Reds, that like just the simple act of traveling to the match and back can be exhausting sometimes, and that's without the fatigue of having played the game. So I guess if I was in his shoes, I might, if there's niggles and things like this, you probably don't risk a player, particularly if the player's of high value. So that might make some decisions easier than others. But then I'd be going for maybe a 75-ish% strength, full strength team, with the view of big changes around the hour mark. And look, hope everybody who travels has an absolutely unbelievable time. I'm talking from a fan's perspective here. I'm sure they will. I'm sure it'll be a very, very unique, maybe never to happen again type of trip. So I hope they squeeze every drop out of it. But ultimately, competitively, we've got to be seeing the bigger picture here, I think, when it comes to player welfare, and when it comes to the welfare of our own competitive season going forward.
I think it's fair to say that all our hand is fairly strong and our focus in terms of the Europa League, the next leg. And if I would agree, Donny, if nobody likes to possibly take a bit of a spanking, but look, if it does turn out that way, we just got to take it on the chin. And anyone online who feels like having a go at Joey O'Brien or the players, if it does work out that way, just needs to take a day off social media or bite their tongues. There's a bigger fish to fry down the line. Like I think Baku is, I've heard, like up to 8 hour flight time, Donny. I would imagine it's a chartered flight.
It is, yeah.
And then when you add in getting to the airport, checking in, it's there and back. It's almost 24 hours a day of travel. So you got, and then you're going time zones. And then, of course, Baku, I wouldn't say it's exactly Las Vegas. So you got to just try and get in there, get the job done in that sense, and get home safely.
Yeah, it'll be a weird experience, I think. And I don't know much about Azerbaijan, but I know Baku itself is the sports washing is going. It's going pretty well lately. They had a UFC event there last month, the first ever. They've got their own Grand Prix, so I think it is going a little bit Las Vegas, insofar as they can. And just an interesting tidbit that I was sharing with people prior to the game, that John Murnock, they recently engaged. John Murnock, congratulations to him and to Ailish. I just got sent a photograph prior to jumping on on air here, Andy, of John popping the question in Central Park, New York. So congratulations to both of them. John, obviously a top red and absolutely vital in the South Talca Park campaign. So well done to both of them. He hit me with some beautiful stats about Qarabağ and their support. That they're just on last year's numbers alone. They played a game in Europe at home in front of over 29,000 people. That was their highest attendance last year. But in the same season, their lowest attendance in the Azerbaijani Cup, I think, was 400. And their average attendance over the entire season, European campaign and league campaigns, domestic, everything included, was less than Drogheda United's average attendance, about 1,700. So they have this they have about a 20-fold increase regularly in European attendances to league attendances. They had over 27,000 people as well last year against Lincoln Red Imps. So it wasn't just a one-off 29,000. They regularly get above 20,000 in Europe. So there could be over 20,000 people in the stadium when our guys are there, versus the 17 that they had on Wednesday just gone. So a very peculiar situation. I don't know if the de facto dictator is out there with his personal guards frog marching people at gunpoint into the stadium when European matches occur. But I'm just going to assume that that's exactly what he's doing, because I can't really get my head around how you'd get a 20-fold increase for games like that on the regular.
Yeah, well, Azer I think, are the ownership group there. So let's see how it goes. I had somebody asking me the other night saying about Qarabağ, the fact that they had to travel from Baku for the game. Well, actually, they didn't have to travel from Baku. They had a training camp in Austria for about 10 days, and they played a double header against FC20, which we mentioned on the show last week, Donny, and
Yep.
Salzburg.
Yep.
And then they jetted into Dublin, fresh as a daisy, and then you see the sort of result. Now, Shels, on the other hand, unfortunately, I don't think they'll be stopping off in Austria, in the Alps. They'll be going straight to Baku, and that's the demands of top European football.
It's the levels to it, isn't it?
Indeed. So, Donny, before we move on, a couple of questions and points came in. This will be the last game in Talca, European-wise, I believe, this year. So we'll have to bite our tongue or whatever, because I think we're probably, depending on how things work out, I think it's almost likely we'll go to Tala first.
Yeah. It's very disappointing, and fair play to another Save Talca Parker, Kenny Cunningham. I watched some of the interviews when I got back after the match on Wednesday, and he was on Premier Sport with Davy Scouse, and he was bemoaning the fact that he thought it was scandalous, and was really making a very strong argument for the fans and for the sort of sanctity of a home leg and for the spectacle and everything else that further rounds in European competition should be allowed in places like Talca that have a reasonable capacity. When you see that, like, Europa Point, our old stomping ground from last year, hosted more European Champions League and ancillary competitions this season. They had former European champions Red Star Belgrade there the other day, which it's just silly that, like, effectively like a trumped up frisbee court is being used for Champions League, and we're being told that we can only play 2 games the same as them there, and then we have to move. So look, it looks like we're going to have to share Tala with Rovers and possibly Pats as well going forward, depending on how their next tie goes. So it could get a little dicey just regarding like who gets first refusal, I suppose, as the use of the pitch. We could be having games on different days of the week that you wouldn't expect to necessarily to accommodate everybody. And look, on some level, you got to say, I suppose, we knew this was coming. We got 2 rounds of Europe this year and last year in Tolka, and they were all brilliant occasions in their own right. They all have memorable sort of parts to them for differing reasons. I it, how my feelings on Tolka, but like leaving it to go to Tala and sort of have to turn that into a home pitch for any game is going to intrinsically feel very weird to me, and I'm sure to most other Shells fans as well. On some level, I suppose we have to take it on the chin and just say, look, it is what it is, and you have to follow the rules, and maybe it's a kind of it's just a fact that if we're going to be in these competitions at some point, you're going to have to just accept that it is what it is for now anyway, and hope that with the ongoing works in Tolka Park, with the West Stand, the new stand, the Ollie Byrne Memorial Stand, soon to be reopened and so on, that perhaps in future years we might be able to go push a little bit further into Europe whilst staying in our beloved home.
A few questions and comments in, Dunny, about fans leaving early on Wednesday night. Now, I was on because I'm getting really old. I'm over in the main stand at the moment. My Riverside days are long behind me, but it was quite clear that, particularly after the last goal, the third goal, with about 5 minutes to play plus added time, so that's the best part of 10 minutes, there was a fairly significant exodus. Now, I'm a little bit on the fence here. I think if fans pay their money, they make their calls. If they want to jog off early, I wouldn't agree with it, but that's life. But on the other hand, these moments, these nights are few and far between. And while I'm sure a lot of the fans weren't turning their backs on the players, it just didn't feel good to me to see people flying out the door. Would you have any feelings on this?
Yeah, I understand there's arguments in both directions with this. I wasn't hugely aware of it at the time myself. Probably, maybe I was sobbing with my head in my hands at that point after the third goal. It was hard to take. And look, I don't have kids. There may have been families there. It's a midweek Wednesday game. By the time 7:45 kickoffs finish quite late. If you have kids under a certain age, I'm sure it can be hard to keep them maybe focused to the death. I would so I'd be loath to tell people, here's what you should do, and you use it as a uniform diktat to tell everybody this is the way to behave and this isn't the way to behave. But I'd agree with you at the same time that I was acutely aware that this was our last Champions League game in Tolka for ellipsis ... insert however long you think it is until we're going to be winning the league again. And furthermore, as we've touched on, this is the last time we're going to be playing European football in Tolka Park this season. We have a bit of job of work on our hands to do to get European football for next season. So again, there's an ellipsis there regarding when the next time we're even going to see European football in Tolka, full stop. So I certainly think having, as it's the best phrase I've been sort of reusing is bursting with pride. That's how I felt about that second half. Having felt so emotional about what was unfolding and what did unfold in that second half before my eyes, that to just slink off and not give them the applause at the end that they deserve, for my money, seems a little crass. And I certainly think, having emptied the tank, having left it all out there, and with two more rounds of European football to go, the least we could have done is let them know that we thought that their performance was manful and was worthy of our adoration and respect. So, look, I wouldn't be calling people out, particularly, I don't know, from the main stand or whatever. Maybe that's a bit different. people leaving from the Riverside who, you can't have it both ways really. If you want to go to the side where you get the passion of the ultras and the fervor and the flags and the singing and whatever, you kind of, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, and you kind of have to stick that out. People on the main stand side who might be coming with family members, young or old, I'd be more inclined to give them a pass. But yeah, let's hope we don't see too much of it going forward.
Okay, so thank you, Donny. Look, let's leave it there. We look forward to seeing what happens next Wednesday. As Donny mentioned, best of luck to the Reds and to anyone travelling to Baku. Safe travels. Have a wonderful time. We'll be looking out for you, and I hope it's a memorable trip. So, Donny, we got plenty of other things to discuss. Before we do, we ourselves had a little milestone the other day. We had 10,000 listeners across our show on Spotify alone. I believe there was a few corks popped out in South Dublin in the in the Donny household, but it was nice to reach that figure, Donny. We numbers are growing week on week.
Yes, very, very. It was yourself who sent it on to me, Andy. And I suppose, look, I've been in various bands over the years, and Spotify has just become a sort of a necessary evil, I suppose, to get out there. When it comes to recording podcasts, thankfully, Andy, the overheads are a lot less consuming monetarily than the overheads of going into a recording studio with a full band and recording original music. To get less than a cent per stream on Spotify is a little galling, but yeah, 10,000 is great. And I think as well, Lee Daly was talking to us about it off air and said that there's a certain metric where, like, it's not just someone who clicks on and clicks off, or this is someone that has to continually listen for over a minute or two or whatever it is. So yeah, it's obviously not all the listens. My own parents listen through, I think, YouTube or one of the other platforms, because they don't spring for Spotify. So it's just an indicator that there's an appetite out there for people to talk and about the Reds and ask questions. And yeah, long may it continue. It's great to see, like, the club is on the up, on and off the pitch, I think, and we absolutely want to be a part of that and help people have a chance to listen to what's going on at their favorite football club. And it can seem like a nothing, and in many ways it is. It's a talking shop, but in this modern day, when there's so many ways you can spend your time and go down rabbit holes about various nichey things that you enjoy, the fact that people are choosing the League of Ireland and choosing Shells and 10,000 individual streams from one platform when we're not even at the end of a season it feels significant. So yeah, keep it coming, and let's aim for 20,000.
Yep. Well, it's a privilege, and it's nice to know that people are out there listening to the show. And of course, I think Donny mentioned it there. I know a lot of people who are of a certain age group, perhaps, who don't listen to Spotify or whatever. So please share the show with your colleagues, your friends. And as I said, it's a privilege and a pleasure to chat every week. Donny, one small other bit of housekeeping. I forgot to send out a very happy birthday to Mr. John McGowan, who celebrated a big birthday very recently. John, the good red, happens to be my brother. He's the king of the pitch watering. You may have seen him again on Friday, on Wednesday night. Happy birthday, Johnner, and thanks for your support of the show. And yeah, so anyone, please share, like, do all that stuff, and if you have time, just leave us a rating. It takes about 5 seconds, and it's nice to know that people are out there. So, Donny, the other big news of the week, moving on to, I know you were devastated to hear that Collie O'Neill has resigned as Shamrock Rovers manager after changing women's football in Ireland.
Yeah, it reminded me of that the Simpsons episode where, was it George Bush is typing up his memoirs, and he says that, and after achieving all of my goals in my first term, there was no need for a second term. So yes, Collie, having changed the game utterly, profoundly, and forevermore, did not feel the need to continue any further, as the game has been irreparably changed forever. And look, I mean, we're jesting, and look, they put their hand out to be slapped, so let's slap it for as long as we can. I am acutely aware that I think my commentary debut is going to be in the cup game against Shamrock Rovers for the women's team upcoming in August. So I'll have to be a little more neutral for that. And I will endeavour to not use the term game changer more than a dozen times. But in I think, look, the facts are facts. The Shamrock Rovers experiment so far has been another failure. We can get some joy out of that for what it is, such is the nature of football rivalries. It does concern me slightly that they might put someone into the job who knows what they're doing, and then we might be in a situation where they improve. Alternatively, they could disimprove, and it could get even funnier. So, the name I've heard is recently ex-Ireland international manager Eileen Gleeson is being eyed up for the position, which would be in keeping with Rovers' propensity to go for big ticket, flamboyant signings, whether it be managerial or player wise. So that remains. That's just again the word on the grapevine is that it might be Eileen Gleeson, which would make a big splash initially, and we'd see how she goes if that's the case. But for this season anyway, a bit like last season, their whole season really boils down to this game against us in the cup. So let's not oblige them in giving them any oxygen for the rest of the season, and we can chuckle to ourselves as we go on to hopefully some silverware of our own.
Well, let's talk about some real game changers, Dunny. Last Saturday, Chelsea headed out to PRL Park, Green Oak, for the famous old derby. Michelle's fuming or licking their wounds after that, shall we say, shock defeat to Bohemians the week before in Talca. And after a couple of minutes, Shell's 1-0 down. But was there ever a doubt, Dunny? We said it before, this group of players, if they lose a game, there's only going to be one guaranteed result the week after. They bounce back, topped off by an incredible goal by Kate Mooney. But what a team performance.
Yeah, it I mean, was it ever in doubt? It was until it wasn't. It does show the character of the team. Obviously, it was tested, and then having lost only their second match of the season, and then to go down a goal, as you said, after a couple of minutes away it's the fixture that Peamount, regardless of where their season has taken them in the last few years, they're always up for games against Shells, which is to be credited. So to go away from home, a goal down, where you could say maybe confidence for the first time has been tested in quite some time, and then to comprehensively run out 4-1 winners on the night, and top it off with, as you said, an absolutely exquisite fourth goal. Kate Mooney's second of the night. Second of the night. Was fantastic and should banish, dispel, put to bed any sort of lingering doubts of like, are we the real deal? Are we who we thought we were? We absolutely are who we thought we were, and I think we are the real deal now. I had to sort of absorb this back and forth, and remember, it was not only did we go a goal down, it was 1-1 at half time, and it was the guts of an hour gone, and it was still 1-1, and I'm sure the Athlone players were eagerly and fans were looking at their phones to be like, okay, this could be all but wrapped up now if we do our part and Shells, hit the skids here. I was down in Limerick getting updates from Jen Mahon, telling me that she thought we had a very ropey start, that we could have been 2-0 down before Avian Clancy equalised just before 20 minutes with the penalty. But from that point on, I think it sounded to me like we sort of put the foot down and saw it out in a very professional way. So we'll touch on it, I'm sure, in a moment, Andy. But it could be a pivotal period where we looked like we were potentially wobbling, and Athlone could, you'd almost say, seal the title, to the fact that they've now wobbled twice in a row in our stead, and it's put it right back in our own hands, which is fantastic.
Yeah, right on cue, Donny. Athlone, well, Shells finished that game on Saturday against Peamount. It would have been wrapped up around 7 p.m. By Saturday night, Athlone played Galway and only managed a draw, which, Galway are a tough team. We've mentioned that before. And then because Athlone are in European action next Wednesday, which we wish them the best as they start against Cardiff in Lizzie Woolen, their game against Treaty United was brought forward to Wednesday past. And again, a 1-1 draw. So all of a sudden, Shells are now 3 points behind Athlone. Shells have a game in hand, and Shells have a fairly sizable goal difference in their favour. So a week is a long time in football indeed, Donny. So from the doom and gloom again of a bad day at the office against Bows, things have changed around very quickly. And as fate would have it, Donny, tomorrow, as we record, Shells travel to your favourite stadium, the Dan Lambert Ghost Ship, I believe, again. And it's the All-Ireland Cup semi-final. This is getting down to the juicy stuff, and this is a great chance for Shells to right a wrong they may feel from what happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Spooky Pirate Ghost Ship Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah, it's hard to know. I suppose you'd say, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. Or have I done a George Bush and I got it upside down?
George W, yeah.
George W. Can't get fooled again. That having now drawn 1-1 with Bows in the All-Ireland Cup group stage there, a game I was at, where we did rest a lot of players, then to be turned over at Talca unceremoniously 3-1 recently. Now this is the semi-final, and look, to be fair to both clubs, everyone is clearly from both sides trying to make this game as big as possible. I'm sure, as I've touched on repeatedly ad nauseum here, about trying to become All-Ireland champions, to imbue this competition with some significance, and I think we are the club to do that. I'm sure Bohemians, with the league well out of sight for them, will be saying, well, if Bows can be champions of Ireland in the women's game, that would be a big feather in their cap as a relatively new team in the women's game. So this is a huge opportunity for them to get to a cup final, and they've said that all their season ticket holders go free. They've allowed, in a very magnanimous gesture, I think, one which I thought was a typo when I read it first, to the point where I had to inquire to somebody at the football club whether it was a typo or not, that Dan Lambert is allowing all Shells season ticket holders to go free if they produce their season ticket in Dalymount Park. So I can't ever remember that happening before, but fair is fair, and fair play to them for that. The fact that the numbers travelling to Baku presumably aren't enormous. The hardy bunch that will go, but there will be a lot of Shells fans in the capital on Saturday afternoon. I'll be attempting to make it to Phibsborough from Glenageary, which I'm not massively looking forward to, but I'll find a way. So yeah, I think on both sides, this has all the makings of a really good, entertaining spectacle. I thought the 1-1 draw there in Dalymount was, from a fan's perspective, very good. We spoke about the bar before, being able to bring your drinks out to the stand. We had a good sizable group of followers that day. I hope we have more again tomorrow, Saturday. Yeah, and Owen Weirin, what kind of strength team do you play? I presume maybe at this stage of the season you play your strongest team, and try and banish the previous reversal, and try and get ourselves into one cup final.
Well, Owen has been utilising his squad. I think every game he's making his allocated changes, and everyone seems to be playing their part. So, Donny, again, it's been another hectic week at the club. We shall park it there for the evening. Best of luck to Owen Weirin and his troops tomorrow. And of course, best of luck to Joey and to everyone travelling to Baku next Wednesday. When we speak to you next week, we'll more than likely know if we're heading to Croatia, Bulgaria, or barring an incredible miracle, will we be continuing on in the Champions League. It's been an eventful journey so far. And as we said earlier on, this European campaign has many twists and turns ahead this year. Donny, thank you again for joining us. Always a pleasure. Enjoy
Thanks,
the
Andy.
weekend ahead. And we shall speak to everyone next week.